Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Veshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare
Hare
Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everybody to session this evening. If I can request people to just be alert, I just thought we'll make the first 5 or 10 minutes a bit interactive. So if you would like to respond, then please unmute yourself and respond, and then again back from mute so we can progress. Before we start today's session, you all know the topic, I would like to just touch upon a very important and relevant aspect that involves us and the current generation. So it happens to everybody. In our own childhood, we might recollect that our own parents or relatives asked us a question, when we were young, like KG class or primary class. We have been asked a question, and I'm sure everybody's been asked a question at that point. And what is that question? The question is, what would you like to be when you grow up? Is it not? Everybody has been asked this question. Even now, when we look at a child, like playing with something, we say, oh, when you grow up, what would you like to be? And so, what do you think? Like, say, for example, if we were asking, I don't know if somebody remembers, but what did you say when you were in primary school? What would you like to be? Somebody would like to quickly share. What is it?
Engineer.
Engineer? Really? Wow, that was good, because at that age, what do children say? I want to be a builder, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be police, right? all those kind of very interesting, very exciting professions, which is out of the box. Nobody wants to sit in front of that time, of course, at least in our childhood, we didn't have computers, but good jobs meant that you sit in the offices, and kids absolutely hated that. They want to be out there and enjoy. So whatever profession came to, or whatever they saw around them, they felt attracted to that profession, and they said that. Now what happens when you ask the same child the same question after 5 years? The answer remains the same?
No, it changes.
It changes, right? You ask the same question after 5 years, another 5 years, and what's the answer? Maybe there is no answer because that person is confused himself or herself. Right? Because the innocence and the initial creativity of thinking gets completely sucked in by the materialistic education and work and all the other bits. I mean, the intent to work. I think it becomes more serious. You start losing your affinity for firemen and police, knowing well that they're not going to give you good money. So what is it that prompts children to become like somebody? What is it? Why do you think, what is it in the children's mind that they are attracted to be like one of them?
Role models.
Sorry?
Role models.
Role models. Thank you. But I don't know who said this. That's sorry, Prabhu.
Varun.
Okay, Varun Prabhu. Perfect. That's the word I was looking for. You hit bullseye. So the children are always looking for role models. In fact, if you think about it, all of us here are always looking for role models, is it not? Hand on heart. We are always looking for role models. And why do we have to look for role models? We have this aspiration. It's a natural aspiration in us to look at role models, to look for the right role models. And if we do not connect with the right role models under guidance, then what happens? By default, we find role models that our peers accept as role models, whether or not it justifies our thinking or not. So all my friends, they want to become like that person. So I also like that person. Is it not? And typically find even in college, when you're supposed to select a specialist line of education, you don't select that line because you love it, but because most of your friends have selected that profession or that specialization, you also raise your hands and say, okay, me also. I remember in my college days, computers were just coming in. It was the in thing. And there was no computers, but computer science was perceived as the next big thing. So when this was about 9th or 10th standard, so when somebody said, oh, what do you like to do after 10th? We had no idea. But somehow 2 people in our group, they said, we want to be computer engineers. And that sounded pretty cool. Computer engineers. We had no idea what it means. But then we also started saying, yeah, I think I want to be a computer engineer. This is just what happens. You just get swayed by it. And if we are not aware of what role models we should select, then as I said, you go in the default mode. And then who becomes your role models? Who are the standard role models today? For children in general. I'm not talking of both the side, but in general, if you see.
Actors,
actresses, perfect, yeah, right. And you'll never see a picture of an actor or actress when they are at home without makeup, will you? You'll only see the glamorous version, right? Which you'll never see them like that ever, if you catch them at home or in their natural surrounding. But that's the role model. And then if that actor or actress is wearing slash jeans, or that actress is wearing deep cut blouses, then everybody starts copying them. Why? Oh, that person has worn, so I also have to wear. Sometimes children start wearing those kind of clothes and parents don't even, it's just a small child. I mean, come on, what is it? So we have to really contemplate on this fact that if we do not consciously select the right role model for ourselves or for our children, they will get into the default mode, which might not be beneficial for them. This is something for us to really understand. And on that part, I would like to just share a few things on screen. Everybody sees it clearly, I presume. If not, just let me know. Otherwise, all good. So we all need role models. What do role models essentially do? If you really get to the crux of it, they do 3 things. 3 things. They do 3 things. One is they basically help us. We need to be informed about them. Like, we don't just dream of a role model. It is informed. Somebody tells us about them. Somebody shares information about them. And once we can identify with that information, we start finding similarities of, can I become like them? And then there is also that inspiration that they give to become like them, not to become like them, but to ensure, to basically show us that if you become like me, you will get all the adulation, the adoration that I have got. So we are informed, we start identifying, and we get inspiration to become a role model. But as I said, these are the usual parameters. Like what? If somebody is rich, somebody is famous, somebody is working very hard, somebody has some belief system, some values, and somebody who is not afraid to do the right thing, even if considered a part of a minority group. And in Kali Yuga, as we know, doing the right thing in today's society is by default being in minority. Whether we like it or not, that's what it is. So I just had this little diagram from one of the websites just to give us an idea of what people expect, or why do some personalities become role models. And there are a list of 5. So these role models, they have usually a very clear set of values. They have the ability to overcome obstacles. They are selfless and accept others as they are. They are also committed. They do something for the community, and they have a passion of what they do, and they have the ability to inspire others in what what they would like to spread in terms of good work or the work that they do. So these are the general parameters that concern us. But most of the people that become actual role models hardly possess even one of those qualities, like we just mentioned, especially when it comes to film stars and all. Not all of them, but most of them. So we see that in the temporary, in this material world, any role model has a limited success. And the success is obviously based on that person's endeavor and a bit of destiny. But any role model today, as we can understand, will be overshadowed by a role model tomorrow, right? Whether it's a film star, whether it's a sports star, whether it's a community worker, whether it's a president, anybody. And eventually they will be forgotten. This is just a collage of some of the role models. And I guess people in mid-age, they may remember some. The current generation might not even remember anybody. Maybe 1 or 2 max. I'm not going to go into the names. But they are all forgotten. Maybe some of their beliefs, culture may be remembered, but they're all forgotten. On the other hand, we can also have access to some eternal, permanent role models who don't just convey the material side of their achievements, but who give us a deep spiritual inspiration. And these role models, they guarantee us success. Other role models, they can only give you some kind of inspiration at the best. But these role models, they tell you and give you the process by which your success is guaranteed, if you follow it sincerely, of course. Number 2, these role models are never overshadowed by later role models. They always shine, and they are never forgotten by their sincere followers. And who do you think are such role models? The entire Guru Parampara, is it not? Who forgets? I mean, a person who knows the process, who has read Prabhupada's books, knows all the role models, or at least the most prominent role models, at least the initial bits, right from Krishna to Brahma to Narada, and right up to Srila Prabhupada. So these are the role models that are eternal, that actually give us something tangible, something that is for our own welfare. Not that material role models are bad, but that is not just enough for our growth, both spiritually and materially. So there is a nice verse in Hitopadesh that tells us what is it that a role model should actually give us, something that is only specific to the human species. So it's a nice verse which most of you would know. Ahara nidra bhayamaithunam cha samanyameta pashubhir naranam dharmo hi tesham adhiko vishesho dharme nahina pashubhi samana. Would somebody like to read the translation, please?
Both animals and humans share the activities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But the special property of the humans is that they are able to engage in spiritual life, dharma. Therefore, without spiritual life, dharma, humans are on the level of animals. Hitopadesha.
So dharmena hina pashubhi samana. But
Samana.
without dharma, if a human being is not pursuing dharma, then he is no better than an animal. Pashubhi samana. So people who are actually giving us dharma, teaching us what is dharma, are essentially exalted personalities. And they are Mahajan, great or exalted personalities. So this is the primary definition. So sometimes we just think that they are people who have excelled in devotional service. Of course they have. But not just that, they are our role models. That's why Yamaraj lists the 12 personalities when he speaks to Yamaduts. That these are the ideal role models of society today. What do? The primary purpose is they teach us the ultimate religious principles, which is to engage in pure devotional service. Who knows what is dharma? What is the definition of dharma? Who can give us real dharma? So in Bhagavad 6.3.19, there is a very nice verse. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavad pranitam navai vidur vishayo napi devaha na siddha mukhya asura manushyaha kuto nu vidya dhara charanadayaha. Somebody read the translation, the bottom.
Hare Krishna.
Correct.
Real religious principles are enacted by Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although fully situated in the mode of goodness, even the great rishis who occupy the topmost planets cannot ascertain real religious principles. Nor can the demigods or the leaders of Siddhaloka, to say nothing of asuras, ordinary human beings, Vidya, Dharas, and Charanas.
Right. So real dharma or religious principles are enacted by the Supreme Lord himself. And nobody else, this verse says, can ascertain the real religious principle. Which brings us to the point that if the religious principles are given by the Lord, how does it come to us? And that's where the Mahajanas come into the picture. Another nice verse. Etavaneva loke asmin pumsam dharma parahaskritaha bhakti yogo bhagavati tannama grahanadivihi. Somebody, translation?
Devotional service, beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, is the ultimate religious principles for the living entity in human society.
That's it. So it's a complete conclusion. We don't have to have any concerns or speculations about it. It's very clear. Bhakti Yogo Bhagavati. It says Bhakti, devotional service beginning with the chanting of the holy name, is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in human society. So when we talk about dharma, we should not confuse with anything else. Dharma basically means devotional service. And the primary aspect of devotional service, specifically in Kali Yuga, is the chanting of the holy name. That is ultimate dharma. In fact, that is dharma. So with that background, we have to look at the lessons and the pastimes of the Mahajans and what they are trying to convey to us through their activities. So again, I think this verse has been discussed previously, but in the series, very, very important verse from Mahabharata, quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but it's very, very, very relevant. So I will recite that again. Gargo pratishtha shutayo vibhinna nasha vrishiriyasya matam na bhinnam dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gataha sapantaha. All right, somebody? Translation?
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, dry arguments are inconclusive. A great personality whose opinion does not differ from others is not considered a great sage. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of an unadulterated, self-realized person. Consequently, as the Shastras confirm, one should accept whatever progressive path the Mahajanas advocate.
I'll just read the second last line again. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden. Where? In the heart of an unadulterated, self-realized person. And such a person is defined as a Mahajan. So they are not just ordinary bhakti yogis. They are exalted personalities who take the message of the Supreme Person and by their own achar and their prachar, they propagate this bhakti, this dharma to people at large. And that's a primary, because of that primary activity, they are classified as Mahajans. And again, we've done this verse. This is the verse that talks about the 12 Mahajans. I'll just highlight two points in this translation, that the Mahajans, they know the real religious principles and they surrender unto the Supreme Lord and love for him. Is uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. It is very confidential and difficult for ordinary human beings to understand. So this is something that we need to really contemplate on, that this subject matter, this dharma, is actually very confidential. And it is difficult when people say, oh, I can't, I've read Bhagavad Gita, but I can't understand. I've read Bhagavatam or tried to read Bhagavatam, but I can't understand. Yes, you can't. It is said, it is difficult. Bhagavatam itself says it's difficult for ordinary human beings to understand. And that's again why the role of Mahajans are so extremely important. That's a visual. So in case you don't remember the verse, maybe you might remember this photograph of where we are. So the top left, the second picture on the left is of one of the Mahajans that we'll be discussing today. And that is Janak Maharaj ki jai. Now, in the scriptures, or the primary scriptures that we are connected to, namely Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, there is not much detailed information about Janak Maharaj, unlike say Prahlad Maharaj or Dhruva Maharaj or Brahma. But there is a very important verse in Bhagavad Gita that specifically Krishna tells Arjuna to illustrate a very, very important philosophical point and give an example. Anybody remembers that verse in Bhagavad Gita? I'll give you a hint, it's in chapter 3. No? Okay. So it's 3:20. Karmanaiva hi samsiddhim asthita janakadayah loka sangraham evapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. So Krishna says that kings such as Janak attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. And chapter 3 is, what is the name of the chapter?
Karma Yoga.
Karma Yoga. Absolutely. So to explain how one can attain perfection by doing one's prescribed duties, by doing one's karma, you can attain perfection. To explain that point and to illustrate with an example, Krishna specifically talks about King Janak. Specifically, there's no other name. It says, Asthita Janakadayaha, the King Janak. And what happened to him? He attained perfection just by doing his prescribed duties. And it's not that Arjun didn't know, but he was bewildered, or he was under Krishna's direction, of course. He was bewildered on the battlefield. And then Krishna had to tell him, give him this advice. Arjun wanted to become a renunciant, right? He wanted to give everything up. Leave the battlefield, leave the kingdom and go away. But Krishna said, no. By doing your duties, by fighting for the right cause, you can still attain perfection. Same thing after the battle was over, Yudhishthir Maharaj fell into lamentation. Remember in Bhagavatam, we hear? And no amount of explaining things to him, and he's Dharmaraj, right? I mean, he's the one who actually explains people. He's the counselor. But he himself, after the war, needed counseling. Of course, again, Krishna's arrangement. And Arjun told him, no, don't worry. Just by doing our prescribed duties, we can achieve perfection, just like Maharaj Janaka. So he had again given the example there, as he had heard from Krishna. So let's look at the lineage of Janak Maharaj, and maybe depending on time, we may touch upon 2 or 3 pastimes or activities of Janak Maharaj. And as with any activity or pastime that we hear from scriptures, we should look for lessons. What is it that we can learn from those activities at the end of the day? And what is something that we can keep in our heart to apply in our lives? That would be the key thing. So Janak Maharaj, as we hear in Bhagavatam, was born, or he appeared in the lineage of Maharaj Nimi, very illustrious king. And there is a nice story about how from Maharaj Nimi, there was Vashishta, and they had a bit of a curse and counter curse, and they had to give up their body. And by churning of Maharaj Nimi's body appeared a personality, just like how Maharaj Bena's thighs were churned and came Prithu Maharaj. So similarly, this Mithi Janak appeared from the churning of King Nimi. The Janak means churning. And Mithi, so this King Mithi, he formed a capital city when he became the king, and that place was called Mithila. And he had a son who was also named Janak, and like that there were 7 generations after that, and all of them were called Janak, almost as if Janak was a post. So all the Janaks had a name, like they had a personal name, but they were referred to as Janak. And then in the 7th generation, from Rashvaroma, who was also called Janak, he had a son named Shiradhwaj. So this Shiradhwaj was also called Janak Maharaj. So this Janak is actually the father of Sita. That's the person that we are discussing, or we will be talking about today. So his actual name was Shiradhwaj. and he had a brother called Kushadhwaj. And Kushadhwaj had 3 daughters, and Kshiradhwaj did not have any children. So because he didn't have any children, he consulted the priests and the sages that what should I do? So they told him, Maharaj, you should plow all around your kingdom. And when you plow, when you keep plowing, as soon as the plow hits any obstruction while plowing in the ground, as soon as it hits any obstruction, you should give some gold to the priests. Not plated gold, okay? Gold coins. Because that time, as we know, there were no metal coins. Everything was in gold or silver. I don't think even copper existed then. It was just gold. So he had to give that. So whenever he came across any big boulders or stones or any obstruction, he stopped, gave some gold to Brahmanas and the priests, and continued. So the intention was that the more charity he gives in gold, the more blessings he will get from all the priests and the Brahmanas, and the more blessings he gets, he will be blessed by a child. So like that, this whole process, this plowing of the field was called the Hola Yajna. So Maharaj Kshiradhwaj or Janak, he was doing this Hola Yajna, and while plowing the land around his palace, he suddenly hit upon this. We know how he discovered Sita. So he hit upon this the plow or the shira. It hit upon some object as he was tilling the land, and there it is said he found Sita Devi. And obviously later on we know she married Lord Ram. So because of this incident by which his plow helped discover the child that was gifted to him, he was called Shira Dhwaj. This is there in Bhagavatam 9:13, 18. And then we understand that Maharaj Janak, he was one of the recipients. In fact, he was the recipient in receiving the mighty bow of Lord Shiva. It was called Haradhan. And there's a nice story there about how this bow belonged to Shiva, obviously. But Lord Shiva was using this bow to fight against Vishnu. And that's another pastime where we're not going to detail, but somehow or the other Indra was involved in that. So Indra one day wanted to see Lord Shiva, who he considered very powerful, to fight with Vishnu. And Shiva said, "Hey Indra, who do you think I'm chanting? Whose names am I chanting?" And Indra said, Ram's name, yes. Well, you know who's Vishnu? How do you want me to fight with him? Huh? Why do you say that? Indra said, see, no, I know all that, but I just have the desire to see you fight. So Shiva said, so if I have to fight, I'm like a Babaji. I have nothing. To fight, I need something, na Baba. So you arrange a bow for me. So then Indra went and told Vishwakarma to create a magnificent bow. And that bow was so big and strong and heavy that it needed 300 people to carry that bow. And this bow was brought to Lord Shiva, and Shiva obviously immediately picked it up. And a similar bow was made for Vishnu. And it was the same weight, 300 people carrying, getting it to Vishnu. Vishnu also picked it up. And then they had some fight, and at the end, obviously, Shiva had to retreat, and Vishnu just smiled, and the war kind of finished. I'm just going through the overview, not the details. And at that time, Vishnu gave his bow to sage Richika, who gave it to Jamadagni, and then that Vishnu's bow came to Parashuram. Shiva in turn gave this bow to Maharaj Janaka. So that bow, as you can imagine, could only be lifted by 300 people. And it is said when 300 people lifted it, they lifted the bow, went ahead by 1 inch, kept it down, took some rest, maybe had a glass of water, whatnot. I didn't read that, I'm just saying. And then again get up, again move 1 inch. So you can imagine how heavy it was for 300 people, not one person. Right? So that bow, 300 people needed to carry it. So that was kept in Janaka's kingdom in one of his rooms. And Sita, when she was a young girl, she was playing with her friends. And somehow they were under a tree where she wanted to pluck some flowers. So she had a stick to pluck the flowers, but she couldn't reach them. So she was looking around, what long thing can I have to take? So she just went inside the palace in that area where the bow was kept, and she saw the bow kept nicely like that. So young Sita, she just picked up the bow, took the bow and started, just putting the bow on the trees to pluck the flowers. And people in the palace, they were shocked. The 300 people cannot carry this bow, and this young Sita, a young girl, is effortlessly carrying it. So they went to Janaka Maharaj and said, Maharaj, your daughter Sita is carrying that bow of Lord Shiva. Janaka said, are you mad? You go and drink some water, go. Then some other servants came running and said, Maharaj, we saw something impossible. Sita is carrying that bow. Maharaj Janaka said, you do one thing. You pluck 1,000 lemons and put it in your head. You all have gone crazy. Get lost. And then he had ministers running and said, Maharaj, it is true. Sita is actually carrying the bow. You please come and see. And then Janaka Maharaj was like, how come all these people are hallucinating? I better go and check. So then when he actually went, he saw Sita holding that bow and he couldn't believe his eyes. But before he could react to that, one major thought struck his mind. So he thought, my God, if this bow, which can only be carried by 300 people, can be carried so effortlessly by a young girl, how powerful should her husband need to be? Are Baba, where will I find such a powerful husband? The father's concern, So some of his ministers, they said, she is a special child. We always knew she's nobody but the embodiment of goddess Lakshmi. So you will need to find Narayan for her. So Janaka Maharaj said, so where will I find Narayan? You think Narayan is roaming around here and there? Anyway, fine, I declare now that whoever can pick up this bow and string it will get the hand of my daughter in marriage, knowing fully well that none other than Narayan can actually achieve it. So that was a story of how he eventually had this plan of ensuring that Sita was connected to her rightful consort. And that's how we know the Swayamvar that happened. So this is an important verse which embodies Janaka Maharaj, again from Bhagavatam. This is 10:14:3. Jnane prayasam udapasnamanteva jivanti sanmukharitam bhavadiyavartam sthane sthita shruti gatam tanovan manobhi ye prayashvajita jitopyasi taistrilokyam. Translation, somebody?
Those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge and with their body, words, and mind offer all respects to descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations, which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees. Certainly conquer your lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds.
Sthane sthitah, Shrutigata, Tanu Van Manobhi. So these words are very important. And this verse is the embodiment of Janaka Maharaj. So what are the three things? That those who remain situated in their established social positions, means Varna and Ashram, throw away the process of speculative knowledge and with their body, minds, words and mind, tan, van, man, offer all respect to the personality and activities, to the personality of Godhead and his activities. How? By dedicating their lives to these narrations. So we offer mind, words, and body to the Supreme Lord. How? Through our ears. We have to develop the urge to hear, and that is very important. See, many times we hear, right? And I've perhaps mentioned before that there are three types of hearing. We hear with one ear, and what happens? We leave it with the other ear. Oh, Prabhu, how was the class today? Oh, very nice. What did you hear? Oh, very nice. Yeah, but what did you hear? Something nice. Don't know what you heard. So that is, it's gone there. It's done some work of purification, but it's gone out. So that's one kind of hearing. Second kind of hearing is it goes to the ears, then it comes. Yeah, it doesn't, because somehow you've tried and stopped it there, so it can't go out. So what does it do? It goes to the top, to the mind, to the head, and then you start speculating. Oh, Prabhupada says this, but I think it is like that. Oh, he said like this. Maybe it is like that. You know, there are some people, you tell them don't do this, okay, and then definitely, even if they want to do something else, they will stop that and they will try and do what you said you should not do. Yeah, the mind is like that. So such hearing also is not really doing its job. It is not having the potency. So what is the third type of hearing? You hear and it doesn't go out from here. It doesn't go up. It comes down into your heart, penetrates your heart, purifies it, and stays there forever. And when that happens, that's when the purification process starts. That's when our urge to hear increases. And that's an example Maharaj Janaka is setting as a Mahajan. Any idea who this personality is? Definitely not a film star or a sports star. Anybody want to take a guess? No? Just look at his bodily features. He's Ashtavakra Muni or Ashtavakra Rishi. Ashtavakra means his body is bent at 8 places. You can see his legs, his hands, they're not straight. And he was cursed by his own father when he was in the womb. That's another story. We'll not get into today. We can have Ashtavakra Katha some other day. So anyway, he was born bent at 8 places. So as you can imagine, when somebody has a physical deformity, he is considered, like different from others. And he was also being deformed. He looked a bit ugly, but he was a self-realized soul. So this Ashtavakra Muni, wherever he used to go, people used to laugh at him, ridicule him. But somehow or the other, because people realize that he's a self-realized soul, he used to be called to all these Krishna Katha discussions where there was debate about philosophy of transcendental knowledge. So he was attending one such sabha, one such sadhu sangha where all the rishis were there, and he was also called. So he went there as he was invited to discuss Krishna Katha. And when he went and sat there, all the sages there, they looked at him and they started laughing. They just started laughing, not discreetly, just openly. They were laughing, just looked at him and laughed as if he's a comedian on stage. And looking at them laugh, how would you feel? You enter some place and you have some physical deformity. And when people laugh at you, would you feel very nice about it? No. It's extremely, in fact, you might not even want to go publicly because of the fear of ridicule. And if somebody does laugh at you, you would feel as if let the earth part and let me go inside and hide myself forever. You know what he did when people were laughing at him? He started laughing more than them. So they were laughing, he was also laughing. They laughed more, he also laughed more. And all this was going on when Maharaj Janaka was present there. And Maharaj Janaka was very intrigued that how come all these people are laughing at this personality and how come he's laughing more than them? So he couldn't control himself. He went and asked this Ashtavakra Rishi that, why are you laughing? He said, oh, I don't believe this. Said, no, what happened? Said, see, I thought I have come to an assembly of sages and rishis. But after coming here, I realized that I have come to an assembly of shoemakers, of mochis in Hindi. Because these people, instead of being attracted to transcendental knowledge, they are being attracted to the skin. Just like a cobbler is attracted to the skin of an animal that he uses to make footwear. These people are just attracted to the external skin. So they are no better than cobblers. So I'm just amazed that they are behaving like this, and so I'm laughing. But Maharaj Janaka understood that this is one self-realized person. And at that point, he took him as his instructing spiritual master, his Shiksha Guru. So this Ashtavakra Muni, he had a lot of disciples. And with interacting with Janaka Maharaj after that episode, they became very close. So Janaka Maharaj used to treat him like his spiritual master. And Ashtavakra Muni gave him a lot of advice, and they always had Krishna Katha. So see, Janaka Maharaj, his natural affinity or attraction was to constantly hear. So whenever he had an opportunity, he used to go to him and hear in Ashtavakra Muni's ashram. And the disciples, they saw that how come our Guru is so intimately connecting with a king? He's a materialist. What is happening to our Guru? Yeah, he is deviating. And like that, they were, thinking in their minds. But Ashtavakra Muni, he realized that he has to correct this behavior of his disciples. So he just planned something. He just said that, well, let me do something. So what he decided is, when Janaka Maharaj comes next and is hearing Krishna Katha, he arranged for a soldier from Janaka Maharaj's kingdom to come in between the Krishna Katha and say something which he wanted him to say. So this person, he came running as they were discussing Krishna Katha. Maharaj Janaka was absorbed, totally absorbed, and Ashtavakra Muni was nicely narrating. This person came, paid his dandavat to Maharaj Janaka, and he said, Maharaj, the whole palace is on fire. Please come, please come. Janaka Maharaj, he was in meditation. He was completely absorbed in the narrations. And he just flared up. And he looked at him and said, you fool. this is not a place to just come running in like this. And after you come here, instead of paying obeisances to my guru, you pay obeisances to me. How stupid can you be? And what is a big thing about the palace being on fire? This Krishna Katha is more important. Go away. After I finish, I can attend to it. And he let him go. And all the disciples, they were shocked. How can Maharaj do like this? He's so irresponsible. There is a calamity in his kingdom and he's so callous. Now Ashtavakra Muni said, okay, now I have to teach them also and show them their position. So next when they were doing Krishna Katha, and again Maharaj Janaka was there and all his disciples were there sitting and hearing, he got one of his disciples to come running in between the Katha and just shout and say, oh my God, there is a monkey in the garden here, and all the cowpins of all the disciples are being torn apart by this monkey, and he's creating havoc in the ashram. My God. And he just went away. And within a few seconds, all the disciples of Ashtavakra Muni, they immediately got up and went to see what is happening to their cowpins or loincloths. And when they went there, they saw that neither was there a monkey, nor anything happened to their loincloths. And then they realized that our Guru is teaching us a lesson. Maharaj Janaka is not even attached to his big kingdom, and we are attached to our cowpin, which is such a small piece of cloth. So just by that example, Ashtavakra Muni wanted to explain or show the world the exalted position of Janaka Maharaj, to teach everybody that lesson. So Janaka Maharaj's one of the main important aspect was that he was very, very attached to Krishna Katha, and he had the affinity to hear. In Bhagavatam, in chapter 2, canto 1, there's this nice verse. Sushrusho Shraddhadanasya Vasudeva Katha Ruchihi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipraha Punya Tirtha Nishevana. For twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. And that is what Janaka Maharaj was. He was the embodiment of that, of completely dedicating his life in hearing Krishna Katha and having that affinity. Whenever he had the opportunity, he never missed it. And at the end, there was a very nice pastime that at the end of his life, when Janaka Maharaj, through the yogic process, gave up his body, he was traveling to go to, obviously he was a Mahajan. So where would he go? He was in an airplane. The airplane came to take him. And as he was flying through the sky, he somehow or the other passed through the abode of Yamaraj. Now don't tell me why. Don't ask me why, because Yamaraj's abode is lower and the spiritual world is higher. Now why did the airplane go from there? I don't know, but it went to maybe show mercy. So when he was passing the abode of Yamaraj, from his body, the fragrance from his body, which was transcendental, being connected to Krishna Katha, this fragrance from his body, just this aroma, spread all over. And all the criminal inmates in Yamalok, they could smell that aroma. And smelling that aroma, all the miseries, all the suffering that they were undergoing in Yamalok, they became relieved of the miseries. And like how when you get some relief, you feel so nice. And then they saw it's Janaka Maharaj. And looking at him, they prayed that Maharaj, just by your presence, we feel relieved of our miseries. Please relieve us of our suffering. And looking at their petition, hearing their petition, Janaka Maharaj, he was going to the spiritual world. He didn't need to do that. But out of compassion, he came to Yamalok. And he met with Yamaraj, and Yamaraj said, "Hey, Janak Maharaj, how come you are in Yamalok? You can't be in Yamalok. It is only for criminals and people who are cheaters and commit all kinds of offenses. Only they can come here. You are an exalted personality. Why are you here?" So Janak Maharaj said, "See, Yamaraj, these people are petitioning me to release them from their miseries. So I would request you to please tell me how they can be released from their miseries so I can help." So Yamaraj thought about it and said, "Okay, Maharaj Janak, remember that one day you were completely absorbed one morning in the names of Raghupati Ram. So whatever credits you earned by being completely absorbed in Lord Ram's name, that credit you bestow upon these people, they will get delivered." Janak Maharaj said, "Why one day? Whatever credits I have got my entire life, I give to these people." And as soon as he said that, all the people in Yamalok, all their sins, all their past offenses, they were completely nullified. They got liberated and went to the spiritual world. So even after giving up the body, Janak Maharaj was so compassionate. At the cost of his inconvenience, he cared for others. And that is another hallmark of a Mahajan. So in conclusion, there are 6 take-home lessons that we can get from Janak Maharaj. So if something resonates with you, please note them down. First, he was a karmana samsiddhim, meaning he achieved perfection by doing his karma. Perfection in performing prescribed duties immaculately. Second, he was called Videha. Videha means one whose Deha means body. So Videha, one who is never in bodily consciousness. He doesn't care about his body. He is not neglectful of his body, but he does not care too much about his body. Third, he was a Rajarshi. He was a very successful householder, a Grihastha, and he was a very powerful king, monarch. He was a Vaishnava, fully self-realized soul. And he was Sushrushoho, means he was an addict. We've got drug addicts and this addicts and that addicts in this material world. So this Maharaj Janak, he was also an addict. But what was he addicted to? He was addicted to hearing Krishna Katha and philosophical discussions in Sadhu Sangha, just like Ashtavakra Muni. And that's why he's called a Maharaj. Janak Maharaj ki jai, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ji ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Thank you very much. So if anybody has to have any other pastimes of Janak or any questions, I'll try and shed some light. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, General Pranam.
Hello.
So, Janak Maharaj is not the actual biological father of Sita Mata. It looked like a foster father.
Yes. Yes. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Pepper.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam. Thank you for a wonderful session. Just curious to know if we know as to why or how Lord Shiva's bow was given to Janak Maharaj. Was there any history behind that, or?
Not sure, Prabhu, why it came to Maharaj Janak. Some affinity of Shiva with Maharaj Janak, knowing that he's a Mahajan. But no, I couldn't find any direct reference. For that matter, why did Vishnu give it to Richik Muni?
That's
Also,
right.
I don't know. But as we can understand, definitely there was some relation, some connection, and they thought that these whoever is going to get the bow would be the right recipient for some reason. That was right. So,
I mean, we could also say that it could be past tense of the Lord, because he had the future events to happen. So it was,
correct.
changed.
Exactly. Of course, in one way that is right, because we also had the Parashuram incident, which was after the bow, where Parashuram came and confronted Lord Ram. And so that was there. There is also an incident where before Ram broke the bow, Ravan had also come.
That's right. Yeah.
So Ravan came, and it is said that Ravan could actually lift the bow. Others couldn't even touch it. They couldn't even move it. Forget lifting. But Ravan managed to lift the bow. But when he lifted the bow, Lord Shiva was concerned. He thought, "Oh, wrong number. That's not for this guy. He may be my devotee, but he can't have touched Sita." So just like when Ravan lifted Mount Kailash, what did Lord Shiva do? He just stepped on the top of Kailash, and it became so unbearable for Ravan, he had to drop it. So same thing, when he lifted the bow, Lord Shiva, he entered into the bow and became so heavy that Ravan had to just drop it. He couldn't hold it for a second more, knowing that this bow is only reserved for my Lord Ram. So in one way, everything is connected, but there was no direct kind of correlation into this is the reason why it went to him.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Okay, in that case, all good, Prabhu. Mandosh Prabhu, I'll hand it over back to you. Thank you very much.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I request Lakshmi Nrsimha Prabhu to say a word of thanks.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandot Pranam. Hare Krishna to all the devotees. As usual, it was a thunderstorm class, Prabhuji. You just showered your mercy, and it was like a thunderstorm rain. Like for the past 1 hour, there was lots of information to take. Especially this class, it was like a personal talk. Like it was you were informing me personally, because from the start when you said like about the role models, I was just thinking back few years before, like who was my role model. Like, yeah, coming from that, like most of us role models would be like actors and actors. So even my role model was an actor at that point of time. So you made me realize like at what stage was I, and you also made me realize at what stage should I be, like how much it is left for me to go, because like material role models, they keep on changing, like some actors might be famous now, tomorrow some other actor might dethrone the other actor, so they will become the role model for the next generation. But spiritual role models are not like that. So when we have Srila Prabhupada now, Srila Prabhupada did not like dethrone Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. He only glorified him, as you said. So all our acharyas, they don't like criticize one another, like they just glorify each other. So you just made me realize who should be my role model, and at what level I am now and what level should I go. So it was just like a personal talk you made me, and you made me realize that. And one more thing, what I realized is generally to grow in devotion, we need two things. One is we have to know the pastimes of the Lord, and one we have to know the knowledge about the Lord. So both should go hand in hand. So without one, I think it's very difficult to grow in devotion. This class perfectly balanced between the philosophy and the pastimes. So from the start, you explain like what is the real religious principle. Is it like dharma, artha, kama? So there are various principles that needs to be followed as said in the Vedas, but you establish that the real religious principle is performing devotional service to the Lord. So that should be the goal of every living entity on this planet, as well as the other planets wherever the jivas are living. So I'm not. And then you also spoke about the pastimes, like how Janaka was the descendant of King Nimi, and then how Janaka Maharaj found Lord Lakshmi, and then how she was married to Lord Ram. And then the beautiful pastimes of the bow of Lord Shiva, and then that pastime was really actually good. How Sita Devi, like how she lifted the bow of Lord Shiva, which even the 300 people couldn't lift at the single time. And after that, after some pastimes, now you mix the pastimes with philosophy, like Ashtavakra Muni, how Janaka Maharaj accepted him as his spiritual master. And you also explain the pastimes where even though when the palaces was on fire, Janaka Maharaj gave important priority to the Krishna Katha. So what I thought is, when we are listening to Krishna Katha, even when if there is some bird flying or if there is some sound coming from the side, we leave Krishna Katha and we turn to that side. We see where is the sound coming from, who is speaking, what gossip the other people is doing. That's what I do generally. But you have like personally said me today, like, just see Janaka Maharaj, what is he doing? He's, even though the palace is burning, he's not deviated from Krishna Katha. But here you are sitting here, and because of some, if someone even opens the door and come, I just look at that side instead of listening to Krishna Katha. So these are all some of the points that I felt very important that I learned today. And finally, take home lessons. So the whole class was a take home lesson for me. But apart from that, you even gave separately 6 take home lessons, like perfection by doing the karma, and then being a Vaishnava. I also learned like serving the devotee is one of the important aspects of growing in devotional service, and you also explained that perfectly. So there are no words to thank you, Prabhuji, but still, from my bottom of my heart, thank you, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam for the wonderful class.
Thank you, Lakshmi Nrsimha Prabhuji. Such a wonderful summary and glorification. Word of thanks. Thank you very much. Now request Her Grace Shtupadi Mataji to sing Janelo in glorification of the Vaishnavi. Her Grace Param Bhava Mataji.